Why develop your managers? Hi, I'm Mike Targos, retired Marine leadership coach, founder of Center Desk Leadership Coaching. In this video, I'm going to talk about why we should consider developing our managers. Namely, a well-led team gets more done. A team with good leadership, good management has lower turnover and higher enthusiasm. You have to prepare for that promotion before you get it. Good leaders know how to spot other good leaders and bring them into your organization. Leadership development takes time. You got to get started now. Everyone benefits from a coach. And all managers and leaders, particularly those new to that position, need somebody to talk to about what they're dealing with. People respect and do better work with good managers, people they respect. And the more senior you get, the more complex your problems get. You got to have somebody to talk to about it. A well-led team gets more done. Have you ever spent an entire week working on something only to find out that you were off track of what was really needed and the product at the end of the week was useless? Maybe you prepared a report on something like inventory levels, but what was really needed was recommendations on reducing inventory. This kind of miscommunication happens all the time in poorly managed teams. Conversely, a well-managed team gets more done. Poor managers usually equate to poor communicators. And something I like to say is that just because something is straightforward doesn't mean it's easy to execute. And at the heart of the problems associated with situations like this is poor communication. Great managers may be hard to find, but we can all be one. And part of what makes a manager great is they see what's coming around the corner. They're concerned about what could affect the team. Not only this, but they're aware of what's going on their left and right with their peer managers. And they find ways to communicate and coordinate and work together efficiently. For example, a lady in the front office of a factory is not going to waste a week's time because she knows her manager is aware of what operation needs, and her manager understands how to direct her to get her working on what is really needed. She understands what she needs to deliver. And not only that, but her manager checks on her throughout the week to make sure she's on track and answer questions. This is called supervision, and it should help people, not irritate them. So consider yourself what it costs for somebody to waste an entire week's worth of time. What about 50 people? And I'm afraid that this is happening a lot. Don't let it happen in your organization. Train your managers. A team with good leadership, good management, has lower turnover and is more enthusiastic. People leave their jobs because of their managers. This is pretty well known. And the studies place the percentage anywhere from 50 to 80%. But why is this? You might say to yourself, our compensation is really competitive. People should stay. Well, the reason in that particular example is that pay and benefits are actually pretty low on people's lists of reasons they stay in a job. Once they have a salary established, they expect it. It's not an incentive to stay. And it certainly doesn't help people overlook other negative aspects of the job. An example of something people see as higher in priority is meaningful work. When people have meaningful work, they're engaged. They're thinking about how to do their job well. In fact, it's probably impossible to be enthusiastic about a job if you don't believe in what's going on, or if you think your time is going to be wasted in the end. So how many people are engaged? Studies say about 50% of your people are probably engaged. Maybe less, maybe more. Another statistic says that when people are engaged, they're 23% more productive and 87% less likely to leave the organization. By my math, 23% more productive, that equates to a full extra workday. So the question is, how do you get more of those people? The answer, managers. Another aspect of the job that people see as way more important than their compensation is fixing broken processes. In other words, what are the things that cause them to waste their time on a daily basis? And if they're a part of an organization where you have people fixing those broken processes, that's really important. In fact, like I said before, it's probably impossible to be totally enthusiastic if you know your effort is going to be wasted. Why would you do that? Your best people might give it a shot, but that's not going to last. What you need is managers looking out for the process, making sure things are happening the way they're supposed to. I worked with a guy years ago who used to describe it as bulldozing the roadblocks. That's what I did for him. Next thing is, to prepare for a promotion, you have to demonstrate that you already have that ability. So if you're moving from manager to senior manager or director, you have to act like you're already in that role. And the other thing is, in an organization, you have to have a pool or a bench of people that are willing and able to step up into manager vacancies when they become available. How many people do you have that can appreciate the big picture and have decision-making ability, communication skills? You need to think about that. As it says at the top of my website, approximately 82% of people consider themselves accidental managers, meaning they feel they haven't had any training for the role that they're in. And while nobody would say that it's beneficial to have an untrained manager, we don't seem to be following through on that belief. So let's take those two ideas a step further. If you believe that somebody should demonstrate the skills of the next higher position, who's building that pool of people ready to step in? Some organizations leave all that up to the HR partner, the HR team. But that's really your responsibility as a leader. But are you putting the time in, or do you need help to do that? Should also consider that comprehensive preparation for management involves increasing somebody's communication skills, delegation skills. They need to know how to write and construct a performance evaluation and involve the person in doing that for themselves. And then confronting and resolving conflicts. Big one. If you need somebody to help you, would love to do that. We can set up a no-cost discovery call, find out what you're up against. Also on my website, in the forum section, there's some free resources, some presentations you can use with your people. Good leaders know how to spot other good leaders. Do you have a good amount of people on your team thinking of the overall health and future health of the organization? Most don't. But that should be part of your culture, is people looking out for the next generation of leaders, next generation of workers in the company. And who better to do this than your managers? High performers want to be around other high performers. And it is possible, even though you hold a management title, and you've seen this, that you're disengaged, that you're not necessarily concerned with the goals of the organization, and you may even be working against the organization. But regarding having a high performer culture, there's a good talk about this from Nick Saban, the former Alabama football coach, and he says that high performers don't want to be around mediocre or low performers, and low performers and mediocre performers don't want to be around high performers. And the reason is there's two standards and they can't really get along. So in your organization, you really want to empower those with great leadership abilities, whether they're in a manager position or they don't even have to be. But you want to empower these people to look for the other great leaders that are out there, whether they're already in your organization or outside. Have people find their backfills, because great high performers are going to want to surround themselves with the same caliber of people. And if your organization is not high performance, if you have mediocre or even low performance, you're going to have to step in and intervene and make sure the best possible candidates are being picked. If you need help developing a scorecard to do that, let me know. Train your managers to look out for your organization in this regard. Leadership development takes a long time, so you got to get started now. If a leader quits or a manager quits, you need people to step up. The only problem is if they're not trained, it's too late. Unfortunately, this happens on a lot of teams. A manager quits and you're totally unprepared. So one thing you can do to help yourself in this situation, because it's going to happen, is make sure your current managers are good at delegating. Give people real responsibility, real projects to work through to see if they're any good at it or if they want to take the next step into management. But what you can't do is just tell people what to do. Tell people the discrete transactional deliverable that they owe week after week, day after day. You got to give them some real responsibility and some latitude to work through things. That's a really good way to find out who's capable of stepping up into management. And you need your managers to help you do that. I learned a long time ago in the Marine Corps that you always lose your best people. And the timing is usually terrible. Just won a new project, big project, and you're counting on that engineering manager to lead the team through it. The next day she comes in and says she's leaving. Few situations have a worse feeling than that. Redistributing work and just the overall leadership of the group. So what you want to do is you want to bulletproof your organization to situations like that. Anytime you feel yourself being overly reliant or dependent on one person, you got to take a step back and think about how you're broadening out the team. And by broadening out the team, what we're talking about is a pipeline of successors. A lot of talk about succession plans in a lot of organizations. What are you really doing about it? How many of your people can you look at and say, these people over here are capable of being managers? Well, the group you want to have help you do that are your managers, the current ones. You want them to make the recommendations to you on who would be good at doing that job. Now, you should have some firsthand knowledge too, but you want your managers to be able to bring those recommendations to you. This is something that I can help you with. Train them to know what to look for. Everyone benefits from having a coach. Now, are you a coach or a mentor? A mentor is somebody that probably has industry-specific similarities to what you're going through, whereas a coach is more directed at your personal, professional development, broader skills that can be applied anywhere. And while you can find somebody to help coach you in an organization, there are some benefits from going outside. Any coach should be open to hearing what your new ideas are, but when you work with a coach in the same organization, that could get a little awkward. especially when you're talking about personnel. Or maybe you have new ideas that are really radical or really new, or just people would just laugh at them if they heard them the first time. You don't want to unveil something like that inside the organization unless you really trust that person. And the other thing is, people are generally skeptical of change. So if you're working within an organization talking about changes, you're going to get a little bit of self centered outlook on things initially, even if the person is a total professional. There's going to be a dynamic like that. These are situations where an external coach can help. The other aspect of that is the more senior that you get, the people around you become a little bit more conservative. Everybody wants to tell the boss the best possible version of the story that's available. And I'd say we're all guilty of doing that ourselves. So, how does a senior manager or senior leader really get that good feedback? How do they maintain the ability to have a good sense of self awareness? Easier if somebody is outside or impartial to the organization. Contact me to discuss. Love to figure out how to help you with this. New managers need somebody to talk about their management abilities. They're going to have more questions than would be comfortable to ever bring up. They're going to think that I was hired into this position and I should know all these things. When the reality is, and it was probably the same for you and I, is we didn't know that stuff when we got hired. We had to learn it. You may get some of their concerns when they're new. What that new manager needs is somebody that's been down that road and got the battle scars to prove it and can share those successes, but more importantly, the failures with them, which is a big point I like to make a lot of times. Is it's really more important for us as senior people to share our failures with people. And I saw this all the time in the Marine Corps. Is you'd hear about how great everything was in the previous command, and we did this and we did that. But the reality is, when you share successes, you can end up intimidating or distancing yourself from the person you're talking to or the group. Whereas if you share your failures, it's a sense of people get the sense that you're humbling yourself and you have humility and you're making yourself vulnerable and you're admitting your mistakes. And then you're really giving them permission to try things and to not be afraid of failing. And no matter what we say, no matter what fancy language we use, corporate speak, people are going to fail. And you do need them to push the envelope, take chances, innovate, and they're just not going to do it if they don't think you're going to be tolerant of mistakes. And I'm not talking about making mistakes a second or a third or a fourth time. I'm talking about honest mistakes, trying to make the place better, and things just don't work out. You want a culture that allows that. People respect and are more successful with great managers with leadership skill. It should be obvious, but a great manager can bring out the best in people. But ignorance in your management team can be a killer. And by ignorance, they just don't know any better. Typical mistakes are doing their old job. New manager just keeps doing their old job, not making decision, wasting time, reversing decisions, or people who can be so coldly impersonal that it really erodes and destroys the team in the end. And when you have poor managers, what you have is a slow death of the organization, because the high performers that you might bring onto the team are going to see what's going on and they're not going to put up with it. They know they can go someplace a little bit higher performing. They're not going to stick with bad managers. But the people that will stick with bad managers, maybe, are the people that have been there forever and are just fine with the status quo and aren't trying anything new. That's what you're going to keep. That's why I describe it as a slow death to the organization. Mid-level and senior leaders handle complex problems every day. And the more senior you get, the more important it is for you to have somebody to talk through these things. Because whether you're a frontline manager or an executive, the higher you go, the impact of your decisions is exponentially higher in dollars and in impact on people. However, the more senior you get, the less people you usually have to talk to about these things. Again, people are going to want to tell the boss the best version of the story that they can. And if you're an owner or a CEO, you may have nobody in the organization that you can talk to about things, at least not the really sensitive stuff. So you probably need a coach. You need somebody outside that you can bounce anything off of. Because remember, senior leaders have less and less people offering them that straight feedback. There's less people for them to confide in. And maintaining that sense of awareness, a real sense of awareness, becomes harder the more senior you get. A coach doesn't have to worry about that. They can tell you whatever they see. In fact, that's a good coach that can do that. And we all have bias. None of us are immune to their effects. All the more important to have somebody to help you think through things, to force you to humble yourself and confess the things that you don't know, and have somebody that's willing to tell you what you need to hear. I hope this makes you think. Like we say, a leader is only as good as their people. An organization or a company is only as good as the leaders within it. From the top leader all the way down to that frontline supervisor, these are the people that set the tone for the performance of the organization. And that includes people who don't have the title but are influencers nonetheless. If you need help in developing your team, let me know. I've been in corporate project management, engineering, and sales since 2013. And prior to that, I was in the Marine Corps for 21 years. I was a battalion commander in Afghanistan, an executive officer in Iraq. I've had countless staff and lower level leadership positions. I've probably evaluated close to 300 people, and I've held individual contributor roles all the way up to senior leader. I know I can help you think through what your team needs. Get a hold of me anytime. We'll do a no-cost discovery session. Again, the website has resources in the forum, PowerPoints you can use with your people. But look forward to hearing from you, and I know I can help.